good for you to go take your place in the world. Have some ambition, have a vision, have a goal, have a strategy. Try to be a good person, not because it's your duty precisely, because that's the proper way to live. We're in danger of undermining all of that, and it's not good for people. One of the things that I've really learned, for example, recently, is that there's a very tight relationship between aspiration and responsibility. So let's say, well, the first question might be, do you need to aspire to something? And the answer is, well, yes, because you have to do something. If you just sit there, you'll die. You can't just sit there. You have to go act out in the world. Okay, so act towards what? Well, that's whatever your aspiration is. You have to have an aim. Okay, well, what should the aim be? Well, it should be something worth doing, let's say. Why do something that you don't feel is worth doing? What do you think's worth doing? Well, if you watch other people and you judge when they're doing something worthwhile, you usually judge them positively if you see that they're taking responsibility, at least for themselves. What, do you want to be completely useless so other people have to take care of you? That's pretty pathetic. And maybe you could get your act together so you're taking care of yourself and your family. And maybe you could even do better than that and take care of yourself and your family and your community. Well, good for you. That's responsibility, and that's an aim. Well, here's one of the things that's cool about that, is that your life doesn't have meaning without aspiration or an aim. Okay, so you need a hierarchy of values. There's got to be something at the top. It's got to be something important. If you don't have that, your life doesn't have any meaning. People are built for a struggle, and they're built for a weight, and you want to take on a heavy burden voluntarily. See if you can put yourself together. See what you can do out in the world while you're waiting to die. It's an all-in game. It better be worthwhile.
It's also hope in that, because one of the things is that if you're suffering terribly, there's two options in front of you in some sense. One is you're suffering terribly and it's unjust, and you're suffering terribly because the cosmos itself is flawed in its fundamental structure. And that's really Cain's complaint against God. The other possibility is you're suffering at least in part because you're not everything you could be. And that's a terrible burden to take onto yourself because it's the burden of your own suffering, but it's also unbelievably hopeful because it could be that, I think maybe Frankl recounts that story. I don't remember where I read it. A woman who visited a psychiatrist and who said to the psychiatrist, I really hope there's something wrong with me. And the psychiatrist said, why? She said, well, if there's something wrong with me, there's hope because I might be able to fix it. But if there's something wrong with the structure of existence, so I'm fated to suffer in this way, then everything's despair. And the people that I have seen who've transcended their tragedy and malevolence that have pursued them, they did have that sense of their own ignorance, even with regards to the conclusions they drew about their suffering.
Well, and you see, when you see people who are noble in spite of their suffering, it is ennobling, it is uplifting. Really it is. And it's been striking to me too. People want to be encouraged in that direction. I mean, part of the reason that my lectures, I would say, have been successful to the degree that they have been is because people find them encouraging. And that actually seems to work, it seems to be positive. Because it isn't necessarily
good news.
Well, it seems to be. I mean, it isn't necessarily the case that would be the case, because it could have been that I would have said encouraging things to people. There's more to you than meets the eye, and you're capable of more than you're demanding of yourself. And if you took on your responsibility and faced the things that you were trying to avoid, that your life would be richer and better, and for you and for everyone around you. And the result of that could have been that thousands of people would come to me and say, I gave that a pretty good shot, and your advice is really awful, and everything is, well, seriously, I took on that responsibility, it just bloody crushed me, and I'm way worse off than I was before, and everything's gone to hell around me, and thanks a lot, buddy. And that it's not like that's a completely incomprehensible possibility. But that doesn't seem to be what happens. What generally happens is that young people in particular, but not only, come to me and say, look, I've been trying to take on more responsibility and to face the things I've been avoiding, and everything is way better. It's okay, well, isn't that something?
Maybe onto something.
Well, then you ask yourself, well, what's the limit of that? Well, if you took on all the responsibility you could take on, and you faced everything that you needed to face, what would you be like? Who would you be? And how would the world transform around you? And, well, if the partial answer is, well, if I do that a little bit, things get a fair bit better, then the next question might be, well, What if you did that completely? Perhaps it's possible to take on too much responsibility and to crush yourself as a consequence. Maybe that's a sin of pride. Who knows? It's certainly possible. But my experience so far has been that when you see people bear their suffering nobly, there's nothing in that but good. That's something. And then when you see people take on more responsibility and decide that they're going to aim up and confront their suffering honestly and forthrightly, that their lives get better and the lives of people around them get better too. And so that's very strange as well, because it also means that the pathway to less suffering is through suffering, right? And that would be hopeful if the world was constituted that way. It's like, well, there's suffering. How do you make it worse? Run away. How do you make it better? Confront it. Yeah, but it's suffering. It's like, yeah, but it's there. There it is. It's right there. It's a precondition for existence or something like that. And it's like you have something important to do as well. And you confront it, and that's the pathway to transcending it. Here's the things we could do. Here's the things that could go bad. Here's how we could make things go better. And you know what that is. It's usually, there's 3 or 4 things that I need to do today that I'd rather avoid. But I better do them, because if I don't do them, the world will be a worse place by 6 o'clock tonight. Right? And that's a funny thing, because the world isn't like that yet. It isn't made like that yet. It won't be made like that until you make it. And you might think, well, here's some things I could do that would be good, that would actually make the world a better place by 6 o'clock tonight. Take some effort, and the willingness and some aim, but you could do that. You can make it slightly better than it was, and certainly slightly less worse than it could be. And you know that. It weighs on you, I would say, as soon as you wake up. It might be a moral burden, or it might be excitement, or it might be some combination of both. But that's certainly how you view yourself. And you see this reflected in the oldest stories. That's the dragon myth, You go out into the terrible unknown, beyond what we understand, into the unknown itself. And you confront the terrible thing that rests there. The terrible predatory, eternal predatory monster. And you can do that because that's what you're like. You're not cowering at home. You're not frozen into submission. You're out there active, and you can take it on. And as a consequence, you can attain something of substantive value, right? And that's you. That's the transformation of you, because now you're braver because you've done it. But it's also something now that you've garnered from the potential, and you can bring that back and you can distribute that into the community. That's the story of humanity. It's the oldest story we have, and it's correct. If you confront potential with truth and courage, then what you produce is good. Well, so that's a good thing to know if you want to produce what's good. It's like, confront the potential with truth and courage, and what you produce is good. And so what are we supposed to do? Well, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to type our letters and make our phrases and construct our sentences and build our paragraphs and put our chapters together and make our books and communicate to people and straighten out the damn culture and constrain the malevolence and ignorance that besets each of us and push nature back and extend ourselves out into the unknown and confront the potential that's there in illimitable quantities and make the world better than it could be otherwise. To move it away from hell, and it can certainly become that, and toward heaven to the degree that we can manage that. And that is a good enough goal. That's the thing. You need something, because your life is tough. It's hard. You need something you need something to get out of bed for and fight for. And God only knows what we could manage in the next 20 years or the next 100 years, We're running at 40%, most of us, because we're half in and half out. And it's not surprising, because life is difficult. It's like, well, what if you were 90% in? Or 95% in, or all in, because you're all in anyways, right? It's a life and death game. No one gets out of this. Everyone dies. You might as well commit yourself, and you might as well commit yourself to the highest good that you can attain, because why not? It'll imbue your life with meaning. It's hard, the responsibility is there, but all the meaning's in the responsibility, and that'll make your life better. It'll make your family's life better, and it should make your culture better. Maybe it make the world better. It's like, that'll justify your damn miserable existence at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're wondering what the hell you're doing here. And that's a good thing, because there's going to be days when you're aching and tired and sore, and there's people in your family that are sick, and you're cynical and bitter, and you need a reason to get up, and you think, yeah, well, a little more heaven and a little less hell, maybe I can pull that off today and tomorrow and next week. And that's worth struggling forward for. And so that's how it looks to me. So thank you very much.